like she said, my name is Van Overton, and my job is compassion. I did what most people do when they get a topic to talk about. I went and I looked it up because, you know, there's the obligatory, according to Webster's, it is, or the Oxford Dictionary says. But I chose to go a different route. I sat down with the word. It's the screensaver on my phone. So every time I opened my phone, I would see that word. And I thought about what compassion means to me. To me, compassion is intrinsically tied to love. It could be love for another, love for an idea, love for a place. I love my wife. I love all of you. I love my community. I love volunteering. I love advocating for children. I love the idea of love. I really love my city. Throughout time, people have found many ways to talk about compassion, from conversations and stories to film and poetry. One of my favorites is poetry. My compassion and my love for my city is why I wrote this. It's called Amiga Mejor. Albuquerque is my best friend. She can be a little rough around the edges, but she has big brown eyes that can soften all she looks at. Her heart beats to the rhythm of native drums. And you can see it in her swagger as she walks on legs covered in dust and clay. Her hair flows like the Rio Grande down her back and is pinned up sometimes with turquoise barrettes. She likes to climb the trees in the bosque and run the streets of the valley. She hikes the invisible trails of the foothills and speaks the language of the petroglyphs. She sits with her abuela every morning, and they talk about the heritage, the mix of their blood, of ancestors who were dancers, healers, farmers, soldiers, slaves. In the afternoon, she sits with the children and they play with flour and water, and she teaches them of tortillas and sopapillas and their connection to the earth. In the evening, she sits with her back against the setting sun so that she can watch the sandias change color to a brilliant pink, which reminds her of watermelon juice that would drip down her arms as a child. At night, she dances. She dances a dance of power and sadness, of remembrance, and she spins. She makes circles in the dust that mirrors the sun that gives Albuquerque her power. Albuquerque. So we are hardwired for compassion. Empathy is as much a part of us as our skins, our organs, our blood. Some of us were encultured by television to be compassionate, seeing Sally Struthers and starving African children, seeing sick and starved animals, seeing people living on the streets. We were brought up knowing that compassion was the right thing to do, but it didn't mean a whole lot to us. We were pretty detached. We couldn't wholly understand because we had homes and clothing and food. So I'm sure many of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is something I pay attention to a lot in the work that I do, especially with children. For those that haven't, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a list of items that are necessary that drive and motivate behavior. You have physiological and safety, love and belonging, respect, living to one's full potential. And when dealing with people, especially children, you start to see what motivates them. Some examples of how my life ebbs and flows through the lives of children and through this hierarchy of needs. The first two, the base of the hierarchy, are physiological and safety. These are simple as food and shelter. We currently have over 4,000 children in Albuquerque who are homeless. If that doesn't speak to food and shelter, I don't know what does. We have 31% of the children in Albuquerque that are living below the poverty line. We hear every day about violence and tragedy, loss of life, or how we have to protect ourselves from this or for that. We recently were just reminded of the 3,000 people that lost their lives in 2001 on September 11th. It was also the day I buried my father. That one event rekindled our national compassion. Tragedies here in our city have brought out the compassion of a community. A favorite quote someone told me recently is that compassion is the great consequence of realizing that we belong together. Love and belonging is that next level. We all know love, or at least what it is. Even those of us who say they've never been in love or never had love have something to compare it to. We are all seeking love and belonging in some way. We see this in many different ways, especially with children who, unfortunately, when dealing with the children that I'm dealing with in poverty and disenfranchised areas, find belonging in ways that they shouldn't, like through drugs or gangs. So above love and belonging is respect. I alluded to movies earlier being a form of compassion, but when it comes to respect, everybody has that respect movie, whether it's Rudy, where somebody's disrespected and they triumph at the end, Karate Kid, any civil rights movie. We all want to be taken seriously. We all want to be triumphant, and even seeing others be triumphant resonates with us on a very deep level. Next, we have living to one's full potential. And that's what we all seek, I think, and what we actually truly want for others. Creating, building, and becoming more is pretty much why all of us are here today. I've been on a journey of compassion that started before my parents ever met. Two paths that came together to give me life. Both paths took root during a time when our country was at war, World War II. On this path, my grandmother, Satoye Yamada Hashimoto. My grandmother was born here in the United States, and she was interned after Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. And in a very uncompassionate decision made by our government, her and her family and 120,000 other Japanese Americans were put behind barbed wire and armed soldiers. This is a poem that I wrote for her funeral. It's called Sunshines. The sun shines again today, though my heart is heavy. Sorrow filling me like rain fills the discarded origami paper cups, abandoned after the tea parties of little Japanese girls raised in gated communities, protected by guards, guns, and razor wires sharper than the wits who tried to make the best of a bad situation. The sun shines again. Remembrances run around like little boys and girls run around their grandmother who slices cucumbers paper thin to soak in rice wine vinegar and sugar, and little chunks of imitation crab meat, which was the only thing imitation surrounding her life. The sun shines again today, and I begin to connect the dots of memories as they link. I think of the path that flows through a century of lineage, expanding from sturdy roots, emerges a tree with some weak, and some weathered, and some strong branches and limbs that are heavy with fruit. The sun will shine again every time the story is told of a wonderful woman who we will all remember with gratitude. So, when the war was over, my Oba-chan, that means honorable grandmother, went on to dedicate her life to creating a world of peace, taking every opportunity she could to give her talk entitled Remembering with Gratitude, where she told people that it was war that she was mad at, that the people had been wonderful. On this path, my Uncle Richard Overton, the United States' oldest living World War II veteran, who went off to fight a battle for a country who did not recognize him as a citizen, and then only to return home to a country he just fought for, to not even be able to shape his community with a vote. So he put down his government-issued Thompson submachine gun. He picked up a sign, a picket sign, and fought for freedoms right here at home. Those two paths met. My father and my mother, who, because of a very, very compassionate decision a few years earlier, were allowed to be wed. My mother being Japanese and Irish, and my father being black. Compassion. Love. Michael Jackson said, "There's a place in your heart, and I know that it is love. And this place could be much brighter than tomorrow. And if you really try, you'll find that there's no need to cry. In this place, you'll feel there's no hurt or sorrow. There are ways to get there if you care enough for the living. Make a little space. Make a better place. Heal the world." Though I always knew what compassion was, I was never really practicing it till I had my daughter. Having children is the ultimate lesson in compassion. I read something that said, "Compassion is the mysterious capacity within each of us that makes it possible for the suffering of others that is neither of our own or of our concern to allow that to affect us as though it were." And though I did have some concern for this situation, I think the first time I felt that was the first time I saw my daughter, all messy and confused and crying. I wanted nothing more than to make everything better for her. I still want that. I want nothing more than to make the world better for my daughter, for my son, and for every child in the world. One of my biggest pushes into compassion came when my daughter started kindergarten. 2 weeks after she started, I hammered out an email to the principal saying, "Hi, my name is Van Overton. How can I help?" And the first thing they had me do was stamp the name and address of the school into hundreds of new books. And I did it. I had a system. I laid out the books, and I was doing it. And through that, every day at the school, I got to meet more people, especially the kids. I would come to school and get high fives and get stories of dolls and toys and trucks and of what was happening on the playground and of trips to parks or to grandma's house. There was this one time where I was hanging out in the cafeteria for lunch, and I saw this one little boy sitting alone, and he looked kind of sullen. So I walked over to him and I said, "Hi, I'm Mr. Van. What's your name?" He told me his name. We chatted for the rest of lunch. The next day, he comes up to me, gives me a big high five. Again, high fives and hugs. Gives me a big high five and said, "I wrote a story. Do you want to read it?" I said, "Of course." So I read his story. I don't remember exactly what it said, but I remember that it made me laugh. And so his teacher, a couple days later, comes up to me and tells me that he's been really excited in class about writing a new story for me to read. She told me that he's been having a lot of anxiety over all this writing, that he didn't like to write. But because I noticed this perceived suffering of a young man and took it on as if it were my own and introduced myself and befriended this boy, I helped him in a way that she couldn't find a way to. Passion. So the years that followed, I became a part of local and national organizations that supported children, that advocated for children. I was fortunate enough to have some of my own ideas and practices implemented in various elementary schools and middle schools all over Albuquerque. And it felt good knowing that I was actively creating something that was making the world better for children. Then, several years later, on August 24th, everything changed. I found myself one evening sobbing and in hysterics after reading about the loss of Victoria Martins, the horrific loss of Victoria Martins. I went to sleep that night, woke up the next morning, and the story was still true. I kind of floated through life. Everything was really surreal. I got my kids dressed and ready for school. Got them to school. Sat in the car in my son's school's parking lot. And I cried. I cried a long time. Victoria Martins was the same age as my daughter. So, I stopped crying. I went to Walgreens. I got a piece of poster board, this markers, and I made a sign. On one side, it said, "How do you help your community?" And on the other side, two things. Hashtag show up, hashtag spread love. I went and I stood out on San Mateo, Montgomery, busiest intersection in Albuquerque. And I held that sign up for 3 hours. Then I went and I did the same thing right up the street here at Cornell and Century. Now I went home. I started a Facebook page. Hashtag spread love ABQ. Put it out to everybody. How are we going to help? A bunch of different ideas. And to date, I only have about 600 followers. But those 600 followers helped me achieve some great feats, like a summer program in a local park that did a free lunch program. And we brought fun activities to kids free every Wednesday. We showed up, threw up a canopy, did fun activities, built homemade fidget spinners, made bubble mix, made musical instruments. It was amazing. I did a community resource fair at Wilson Middle School where I brought out 20 organizations to support children for free. And it did it at the same time that they do their free lunch or their free food pantry. So the parents were already there, and while the parents were getting their food, the kids could come through and play games, have pizza. I had a DJ that was 12 years old. He was great. He was good. He played EDM. The kids dug it, but the adults, whatever. But he was a great kid. I now live every moment in compassion. So much so that during the preparation of this, I had a friend call me because the night before her son had threatened to take his life. 6th grader. And she's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. So I did what I do best. Got on Facebook, put the message up, and then I started making calls. Called everybody I could, started finding resources, and put all of this on hold. And
After I found the resources, I went and I got on the phone and I reached out to people and said, okay, we need to come up with $160 for next week and $160 the week after, because this family everywhere offers free counseling if you have Medicaid. This family has an appointment at the end of the month. They can't wait that long. This little boy needs help now. So I stopped what I was doing because I love all of you, but you all became secondary in that moment. And I found the resources to make sure this young man can get the help he needs. I now live every moment of my life in love. Every single thing that I do starts with a thought. Is what I'm doing right now, this minute, in this moment, helping or hurting children? Everything. Getting on the bus. Giving food to a stranger. Giving my bus pass to somebody who doesn't have enough money. Everything is what I'm doing helping or hurting children. And I hope that you all can find a way to do that. Figure out what moves you, what drives you, what motivates you. And to constantly check with your heart and ask yourselves, is what I'm doing helping or hurting? We need to move today wearing our hearts on our sleeves. We need to make a little space to make a better place, to live our lives in love and compassion and realize that we all truly do belong together.